Welcome back to a brand new season of No Holding Back. I'm your host, Susan Estrich, and I'm thrilled to be back with you. If you're new to the show, we dive into unfiltered, unapologetic, and insightful conversations. I speak my mind, and I'm lucky enough to have great guests who I encourage to speak their minds as well. No topic is off limits as we take on the issues that shape our world, God knows, from Donald Trump to Vladimir Putin, from the headlines to the backroom deals that actually move the needle. The world is a chaotic, unpredictable, and sometimes downright shocking place, but we're here to make sense of it all. The podcast promises voices that matter, conversations that count, and revelations you won't want to miss. This is No Holding Back. Today, I'm really excited to have with me Dr. William R. Davis, a preventive cardiologist, a renowned health advocate, somebody who's really famous for making millions of people healthier again, and he can do it for us too. His work first captured international attention with Wheat Belly, where he made the case for rethinking our relationship with wheat. And we should rethink that. I need to rethink it. He has expanded on those ideas in books like Wheat Belly, Total Health, Undoctored, and Super Gut, each one challenging conventional medical wisdom and empowering readers to take control of their own health. Beyond his books, Dr. Davis has built a thriving community online, amassing more than 200,000 followers on social media, where he continues to share insights, practical tools, and inspiration for healthier living. From questioning the standard American diet to exploring the role of the microbiome in everything from digestion to immunity, his work has sparked a worldwide movement towards more intentional, science-driven wellness. Dr. Davis, how do you do it all? How did you get to do all this? This is amazing.
Susan, I've been doing it for a long time.
So have I, but I've been on the lost side. You're at least making people healthier. I'm making them sicker, I sometimes think. Tell me where this insight came from to just challenge the whole medical establishment the way you have.
Susan, it wasn't something I did intentionally. It wasn't something I did on purpose. It kind of happened by accident in a lot of ways. A lot of it got started when my mom died of sudden cardiac death. So I was practicing as a cardiologist. This goes back now almost 40 years, a long time ago. So I was practicing as what's called an interventional cardiologist. All that means is I was opening people's arteries when they were having heart attacks or angina, using stents and other procedures. It was the 1990s, 80s, 90s. So kind of a Wild West period of heart procedures. And it was kind of an exciting time. And here my mom dies of disease that I was managing every day in a hospital laboratory. Well, it illustrated to me just how inadequate it was to try to manage a disease like that in a hospital facility when heart attacks occur at home, at work, en route to the hospital. So back then I asked, well, what could I have done with my mom? So she was found dead about 4 months after her successful 2-vessel coronary angioplasty. So what could I have done for my mom? Have warned her 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years ahead of time. Well, conventional thinking would tell you, look at cholesterol, which is a complete, utter fairy tale. It's nonsense. If I told you, for instance, if I told you your total cholesterol is 240 milligrams or your LDL bad cholesterol is 170 milligrams, are you going to have a heart attack tomorrow, next week, next weekend, next year, 10 years? Never. You can't tell. It's a deeply flawed biomarker that should have been abandoned. Now, if there's nothing better, okay, we have to hold on to it. But there's tons of things that are better. The problem is they don't make a lot of money, like the hundreds of billions of dollars that have been made by statin drug manufacturers that reduce cholesterol. So the real tragedy, Susan, of the whole conversation about cholesterol is that it took everybody's attention away from the real causes of heart disease. That's why in the U.S., 80 million Americans take statin cholesterol drugs. There's been no meaningful reduction in cardiovascular death or other events. That's why your hospital probably added a $100 million new wing for cardiovascular care, because heart disease remains the number one moneymaker for hospitals, for my colleagues, for the drug and medical device industries. So that was one thing that opened my eyes to the folly of conventional, in this case, heart care. Now, a number of other things happened, and one of the things that happened was that if you want to predict my mom's death, or let's say you're a person, you're 55 years old, and you say, but my mom had a heart attack at age 60. Is that in my future? Well, how do you know? Cholesterol won't tell you. So
Well,
the
I'm
only
going to tell
thing,
you, we've all lived, Dr. Davis. You've said this probably 1,000 times, but I haven't heard it 1,000 times. Every time we go to the doctor, they check our cholesterol. If the cholesterol is too high, they tell you to go on a statin. Why is that wrong?
one, it never was a good marker to begin with. It came from 1950s science, where they're trying to find a crude way to quantify the number and character of the particles in the bloodstream that actually do cause heart disease. Even that long ago, they knew there were fat-carrying proteins, lipoproteins, that are causal in heart disease. They knew this. But how do you quantify them in 1958, 1960? Crude science and technology. So they said, well, we really can't. Let's choose a marker. We could choose apoprotein B, one of the ingredients in those particles. We could choose apoprotein C2. We could choose let's choose cholesterol. We're going to measure the cholesterol in the various fractions of blood separated by spinning the blood down, or other methods. And we're going to use that cholesterol as a crude dipstick for how many particles there are. And that caused people to believe that cholesterol was the cause of heart disease. It's not the cause. It's a crude, indirect biomarker. The great tragedy here is really the causes of heart disease are readily identifiable and readily correctable. And you can do it for virtually free with almost no cost, very little effort, but it involves no drugs, has nothing to do with cholesterol. You don't even need a doctor to do it. But that's the blessing and the curse. If there's not a whole bunch of, look at Alzheimer's disease now. Why are they focusing on antibodies against the beta amyloid plaque and phosphorylated tau, when we know with good evidence now, billions of dollars spent, it does not work. In fact, it causes an acceleration of brain atrophy to give people these antibodies for $34,000 a year or so. Now, wait a minute. You mean you're not going to talk about omega-3 fatty acids and the phenomenon of glycation and insulin resistance and vitamin D, all the wonderful things you and I can do to prevent cognitive decline and dementia, but you're focusing on getting rid of beta amyloid plaque with antibodies, even though there have been 8 agents now that have virtually no effect on the cognitive decline. So this is emblematic of what goes on in conventional healthcare. Go after the money. Go after what pays the best, not what benefits you and me the most.
So, what do you say to somebody who walks into your office with high cholesterol and says, I don't want to take statins? What do you say to that? Because I had a friend like that, and I took him to the fanciest Dr. Shaw, BK Shaw out here, fanciest cardiologist. He looked at him and said, you're going to be the smartest man in the cemetery because you're not taking your statins, you're not taking your drugs, you're very smart. This guy was a genius, a billionaire. And he died of a heart attack in his sleep at 63, not taking his medicine. I mean, what do you say to a person like that?
I tell them, grab a big, thick black magic marker and cross out total and LDL cholesterol. They're fictions. They're nonsense. LDL, if you look at your LDL cholesterol, for instance, you'll see in parentheses, calculated. It's not even measured. It's calculated from a crude equation developed literally in 1958 called the Friedewald calculation. So once again, if you have heart disease, let's say we know you have heart disease, not guessing with a cholesterol value. Cholesterol is not a disease, right? Coronary atherosclerosis is the disease. Can we measure it? Yes. So when my mom died and I asked, what could I have done? Well, the thing you could do back then was get a coronary calcium score, a CT heart scan. This was so long ago, it was actually an EBT heart scan, electron beam tomography, from San Francisco. That technology was developed by an engineer in San Francisco, replaced now by what's called multi-detector CT coronary scans to generate a coronary calcium score. Because my friend John Rumberger, when he was at Mayo Clinic, did an autopsy study of people who died car accidents, tumbled down the stairs, hip fractures, all it. and showed that 20% of total atherosclerotic plaque volume is occupied by calcium. And we can see and precisely quantify calcium. So calcium is a dipstick for the amount of total atherosclerotic plaque. People say, oh, I don't care about hard plaque. No, no, no. It's an index of total plaque. So we can measure how much atherosclerosis you have. That was true 40 years ago, remains true today. Now, the pushback on that was that it was cheap to do and didn't result in procedures, though many of my colleagues have found ways to scare people. They say, Susan, your score is so high, you're a walking time bomb. I can't be responsible for your safety. And even though you say, now, wait a minute, I rode my bike 10 miles yesterday. I feel great. Why are we're going to put you through the real test, heart catheterization, see if you need a prophylactic stent or bypass operation. That's malpractice, Susan. It's done every day. It's done every day in every hospital because it pays so well. If you want to know how to prevent heart disease, once it helps to quantify it. So let's just say you had that heart scan and get a coronary calcium score. Normal is 0, no plaque, no calcium. But let's say your score is 400. For a woman, that would be very high. And 400 tells us, it's a crystal ball, Susan. It tells us you're going to have a heart attack, or you're going to die, or you're going to have symptoms that justify bypass surgery or stent implantation or similar procedures in about 7 years. And so what if you did nothing? That's dumb, right? But if you did nothing, how fast will the score go up starting at 400? 25% per year. 400, a year later, 500, another year, 625. And as you approach 1,000 or so, your risk of dying, heart attack, goes way up. Okay, so you know trouble's ahead. What if you took a baby aspirin, a high-dose statin cholesterol drug, like 40 milligrams of Lipitor, cut your fat, saturated fat, exercise? How fast will that score increase? 25% per year has zero effect. We helped publish these data 30 years ago, Susan. 35 years ago.
No effect at all?
On that measure, no. Zero, nothing. In fact, it may actually increase the rate of increase of the calcium score. So what do you do if the best they have? My colleagues to this day, Susan, call that optimal medical therapy. It's almost like a cruel joke. So what do you do? Well, it took me a number of years to figure this out. Some of these data are published. This is not my speculation. People think I'm making this stuff up. It's not. Of course, that's stupid, right? Identify the causes. Well, stupid, right? Identify the cause. What are the causes of coronary disease? There's several. There's what's called VLDL, very low density lipoprotein. It's a particle created by the liver when you consume carbohydrates and sugars, like the amylopectin A of grains. Your liver is very good at converting that amylopectin A or sucrose or fructose or glucose to VLDL particles, very low density lipoprotein particles, rich in triglycerides. That they themselves cause heart disease. But even more importantly, those VLDL particles interact with LDL not LDL cholesterol, the crude indirect marker, the actual LDL particles. And that interaction leads to the formation of small LDL particles. Susan, we now have 55 clinical trials to show us that small LDL is the superior cause of coronary disease. And you track that. And then there are things that amplify this effect. Insulin resistance, which 2/3 of adult Americans now have, inflammation, and most recently, and things that amplify those effects: vitamin D deficiency, omega-3 fatty acid deficiency, magnesium deficiency, thyroid dysfunction. These are all amplifiers of that liver process. And then, even most concerningly, what's called small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, SIBO, and endotoxemia. In other words, as modern Americans overexposed to things like antibiotics and probably other things like glyphosate, the herbicide, and numerous other factors, that's allowed the overproliferation of fecal microbes in the colon that had then been allowed to ascend into the 24 feet of small intestine. Well, the 24 feet of small is not accustomed to having fecal microbes. And so when those fecal microbes, trillions of them, live and die in the space of just hours, they live very short lives, they shed their toxic compounds that then gain entry into the bloodstream. I know that's kind of complicated. That's called endotoxemia. Now, the endotoxin first enters the portal venous system. That's the venous system that drains the gastrointestinal tract to the liver. So your poor liver takes a beating from this process and amplifies the production of VLDL and small LDL. So you put that all together, it's the perfect storm of having heart disease. Yet they're still talking about cholesterol that has nothing to do with heart disease. And that's the tragedy, Susan. These things have been worked out. But if I said, Susan, we're going to address your vitamin D, your omega-3 fatty acid status, because you won't eat brain anymore, right? And you can't eat all the fish you want. It's got mercury and cadmium, right?
Right.
We're going to
Yeah.
shift your diet. We're going to reject this idea of low fat, low saturated fat, healthy whole grains, because that's nonsense, because it has the amylopectin A that amplifies heart disease. And we're going to address SIBO and endotoxemia. What's this going to cost me? A few dollars? Almost nothing.
Almost
That's
nothing. That isn't going to make money for the medical industry.
Nope. You can do it from the comfort of your kitchen. You can do it effect. Now, and you don't have to take on faith. There are many ways people can track whether this works. One way would be to track that calcium score. So if your score was 400, you do all these things. You shift your diet, correct your vitamin D, omega-3, you address your SIBO and endotoxemia, and your score a year later, 2 years later, is 250. You've regressed your coronary disease. And there are other markers you can follow also, like the small LDL. You can quantify small LDL very easily. I've been doing it for over 30 years. It's inexpensive. It's readily available, even though if you went to your doctor and said, hey, doc, I'd like a lipoprotein panel. I need to know if I have a lot of small LDL. Oh, it's experimental. We don't do that. Or it's not covered by insurance or Medicare. Those are all lies. Or it's unproven. Lie after lie. I'll translate what my colleague is saying. Susan, I can't be bothered. That sexy sales rep who wears a miniskirt comes in here every Friday and brings lunch. She tells me cholesterol is the cause for heart disease. And that's what I'm going to do for you. I can't be bothered educating myself in the science. It's too much trouble. And my training is 20 years old. We didn't talk about that back then. This is the state of affairs, sadly, Susan, in modern healthcare. It's based on revenue and profit, not on science. And that's the great thing is the science is there. I didn't make this up. The science is already there.
So what are you telling Dr. Davis? What do you tell somebody who comes to you, sort of a refugee from normal healthcare, who's been told that they should be on statins for the rest of their lives, that they should, eliminate certain foods, that they should eat whole wheat wraps all the time and whole wheat bread and all of this? What do you tell them to do? Are there steps? Is there a program? How do you change the whole way you live and eat?
Well, start with, so once again, identify their actual causes of heart disease. And you do that by doing testing like NMR lipoprotein testing, nuclear magnetic resonance. All that means, Susan, is taking the plasma, the clear part of your blood, and putting it, in this case, in a magnetic field. And there's a way to fractionate and characterize the particles in your bloodstream. It could be a magnetic field in NMR. It could be electrophoresis in gel with an electrical current. It could be spinning down your plasma in a centrifuge and letting the layers separate out. There are numerous ways to fractionate and understand the particles in the bloodstream. The most common is really just NMR. It's inexpensive, like $90 for an NMR lipoprotein test. And then get other related markers that contribute to cardiovascular risk. Your magnesium level, like an RBC magnesium level. Your vitamin D, your 25-hydroxy vitamin D. A thyroid panel, TSH, free T3, free T4, and some others. And there's a couple other measures, glucose, hemoglobin A1C, all the things that we know contribute to cardiovascular risk. Very simple, common tests. And then we correct them. So a very common situation would be somebody has let's say a coronary calcium score 400, or they had 2 stents, or they were resuscitated from a heart attack and sudden cardiac death. I mean, real stuff, right? We look for the cause. Typical results would be small LDL, 2,400 nanomoles per liter, particle count per volume. They go wheat, grain, sugar-free, correct those deficiencies, vitamin D, omega-3, magnesium, etc. We check it again, 0. Not 10% better, not 20%, zero, or some other
Zero
low
wheat,
number.
grain, and sugar-free. Is that what you said quickly? I
Mhm.
was trying to catch it.
Yeah. So the small LDL is triggered by the consumption of wheat, grains, and sugars. The amylopectin A carbohydrate unique to wheat and grains. So people say, "Oh, I'm gluten free." Nah, gluten is only one. It's like saying I'm nicotine free, but I still smoke cigarettes because I smoke low nicotine cigarettes. No, no, there's tons of things wrong with tobacco. Same thing here. There's a lot more wrong with wheat and grains than gluten. And one of the things is this amylopectin A that is uniquely able to trigger the formation of small LDL particles. So we go wheat, grain, sugar free, small LDL drops from some high number, typically a zero. If you're following conventional numbers, triglycerides drop from, let's say, 300 to 44. HDL, the good, goes from maybe 35 to 90. Blood glucose goes from maybe a pre-diabetic range to 84. Hemoglobin A1C falls to below 5%, even though you may have started at 7% in the diabetic range. In other words, all these phenomena normalize all the things that my colleagues grapple with using drugs, statins, insulin, metformin, hydrochlorothiazide, ACE inhibitors, beta block, all the garbage that passes for conventional management, in this case, a cardiovascular risk. There's other diseases, of course, we manage,
Sure.
but just from a heart disease standpoint, the world is engaging in fairy tales. Sadly,
Sadly. So you go on. What do you eat, Dr. Davis? Like, what did you have for breakfast this morning?
well, I made something odd. I made a green bean casserole in coconut milk with bacon, and I baked it. It was delicious.
Bacon.
Yeah, so I had leftovers, so I ate that this morning. But I often have two eggs with sausage or something like that. So, uh,
Two eggs
one
with sausage. I mean, isn't this what we've been taught is poison?
yes, and it's nonsense. There never was, Susan, there never was evidence to tell us that total fat and saturated fat caused heart disease. That's a misinterpretation, misrepresentation. There are things that cause heart disease that are dietary. There's no question about it. But it's not total fat and saturated fat. So the program that all my followers follow is we never restrict fats. We don't avoid such things as saturated fat. We never limit calories. But we don't eat wheat, grains, and sugars. And you eat whole foods. You have eggs, you have sausage, you have salmon, you have vegetables, you have green
Fruit. What
beans and
about fruit?
asparagus. So we do, because the world is insulin resistant. We have a world where the overexposure of processed, ultra processed foods, inactivity, and a variety of other reasons has caused the vast majority of Americans to be insulin resistant. That is,
What
we
does
don't
that mean
respond to.
exactly?
It means that your muscle, your brain, other organs don't respond properly to insulin. There's a block in the entry of insulin to your cells. And so your pancreas overcompensates. They produce huge amounts of insulin. So somebody who's insulin sensitive, that is, they're responding to insulin, if you check their insulin level fasting, it's like 1 or 2 microunits per liter. If you check somebody who's insulin resistant because they have a big tummy, they have high triglycerides, they have high blood glucose, they're inactive, their insulin levels 90, 140 microunits. It's not 10% worse. It's not 30% worse. It's 30-fold, 100-fold worse. So that high level of insulin drives many abnormal processes. It increases your risk for breast cancer, cognitive impairment and dementia, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, the liver production of VLDL and small LDL. So having high insulin, hyperinsulinemia, and because of insulin resistance is a major driver of multiple health problems. Well, you can get rid of it, and you can get rid of it within days to weeks. Don't eat foods that raise insulin, wheat, grains, and sugars.
Wheat, grains, and sugars. That's
Uh-huh.
fruit. I keep coming to
So we
fruit.
do limit
I can give
fruit.
up brownies if I can have fruit.
Well, remember that fruit has been hybridized and cultivated for sugar content and low fiber content. So if you and I were running through the Amazonian jungle and you try to eat some wild fruit, you say, "Oh my God, this is almost inedible. It's hard, fibrous like this, and it has almost no sugar." That's what fruit is. But
That's
now
what fruit is supposed to be, right?
that's what fruit is supposed to be. The fruit we have has been modified, has been altered genetically through a variety of methods to be sweet and low in fiber. So we have to be careful with fruit. So we do limit carbohydrates to no more than 15 grams net per meal. And that largely comes from efforts to minimize the expression of small LDL. But what the message here for people to know is that risk for heart disease is readily addressable, and it's easy. It does take a little bit of understanding and work. And sadly, the last person to talk to about heart disease is the doctor. This is true in so many areas. If you went to a neurologist, let's say at a major institution, and said, "Hey, my dad had dementia at age 82. I want to make sure I can take steps that doesn't happen to me." What's the doctor going to say? They're going to say, "Well, eat a balanced diet." What the hell does that mean, right? Stay physically active and take a statin drug. Is any of that true? No, none of it's true. For one thing, no one knows what a balanced diet is, right? Are there things you could do that dramatically reduce risk for cognitive impairment? Yes, there are many things you can do. It's clear that the DHA form of omega-3 fatty acids is spectacularly effective. Vitamin D, because it normalizes insulin resistance, major factor. Make sure your thyroid is optimized. Don't allow glycation, glucose modification of proteins like the proteins in your brain. And you do that by not allowing blood glucose to go up. No wheat, grains, or sugars. Same
No
thing.
wheat, grains, and
Yeah.
sugar.
Uh-huh.
Do you eat literally no wheat, grains, and sugar?
Well, a lot of us get sick. Literally, Susan, when we go back to wheat. So the longer you're wheat free, the more likely it is you're having adverse risk. So if I eat wheat, I'll lose control of my bowel. All kinds of bad stuff happens. So it's not like yeah. So it could just be a breadcrumb too. Another, it doesn't take much. It is extremely toxic. There is some tolerance though. That's why people can often eat wheat, and people don't recognize a lot of the signs of wheat intolerance. Like no one's measuring small LDL, right? If you measure your blood glucose, more and more people are wearing continuous glucose monitors, for instance, and you'll see right away if you have pasta or pancakes or a sandwich or a bagel, blood glucose goes sky high. And that generates irreversible changes. For one, it triggers formation of small LDL that causes heart disease. It causes glycation, glucose modification of proteins. That's so important. That's not talked about enough. If my blood glucose goes above 100, I'll glycate the proteins in the lenses of my eyes. Cataracts. I'll glycate small LDL, making it much more aggressive and causing heart disease. I'll glycate the collagen in my skin and in my joint cartilage. Collagen is very glycation prone. And when you glycate collagen, it essentially disintegrates. Your body reabsorbs it.
Wrinkles.
You get wrinkles. You get
That's terrible.
Yes. So
what do you do about that?
Don't eat wheat, grains, and sugars, and take nutrients that normalize insulin resistance. Vitamin D, omega-3 fatty acids, magnesium, and iodine. And then I'll, of course, address
resistance from the food industry. They must hate you.
Oh, they do. Way back when I first wrote Wheat Belly and it was getting a lot of attention, oddly, there are two industry groups that support the wheat industry. I think one's called the Whole Grains Council, something like that. And they oddly, Susan, they published their meeting minutes online. And in this meeting, they said, there's this doc who's writing this book called Wheat Belly. It's hurting our industry. We need to hire writers and investigators to smear his reputation.
Oh, God. And they
launched his...
They put that in their minutes. They said it straight.
They actually did. Stupid, right? But after I saw a whole bunch of... I saw a whole bunch of canned articles, online magazine articles. They're almost carbon copies of each other, but all trying to steer me. oh, this is nothing more than a gluten-free message. There's nothing original here. It's contrary to all dietary guidelines. I mean, nonsense stuff. One thing, I had several debates, Susan, with nutritional scientists. So we're going back now 15, 16 years. And I used to get a little nervous. This could be tough, right? I'm talking to PhD, faculty members at university of this or that. I'm thinking they're going to have some tough arguments. You know what, Susan? It was debating with children. I would say something like, well, the amylopectin A, the carbohydrate unique to wheat and grains due to its branching structure, is a flagrant trigger for VLDL and thereby small LDL particles. They would say, we don't know what that is. Or I'd say, how do you deal with phytates? Phytates are the compounds in wheat and grains enriched by farmers because they love phytates because it wards off pests like molds and mildew and insects. So modern wheat has been enriched in phytates, but phytates bind minerals, calcium, magnesium, zinc, and iron, and you poop it out in the toilet. That's why you get a lot of iron deficiency by consuming grains. I said, how are you dealing with that? We don't know what you're talking about. In other words, Susan, even debating the purported experts is like the doctors. We have the situation in medicine, also to some degree in science, where the purported experts are nothing of the kind. And so you'd think it'd be tough arguments persuading my colleagues, cholesterol is not a cause for heart disease. Grains are not heart healthy. They're nonsense. It's so easy. Yet they stick to their guns. Because, if you made a career as professor of nutrition at University of whatever, and you've published reviews and papers proving that grains are healthy for you, and then some schmuck like me comes along and says, hey, everything you've done in the last 40 years is wrong, they refuse. It's going to take generations, Susan, to shift this Titanic of thinking towards something closer to the truth. It's not going to happen by Tuesday, not going to happen by next year. It's going to happen over generations.
How close is what you're saying to what, I hate to say this, I worked for his uncle, Robert Kennedy Jr. is saying about processed food? I mean, he's gone on this Make America Healthy Again, and he's gone on this case against processed food, which seems to me right. Is he right about everything, or is he just right about processed food?
Not everything, and I've never heard any opinion expressed about such things as cholesterol, for instance, or diet outside of that issue. But he is right. So the thing that got America fat and diabetic and more likely to have dementia and heart disease and various forms of cancer is dietary guidelines, right? Cut your fat, saturated fat, eat more healthy whole grains, everything in moderation, all that. But made worse. Made worse by the predatory practices of the food industry, telling you that, chips are great for you, soft drinks are fine, everything in moderation. Susan, it just does not help that the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, that's the dietary group, why do they say everything in moderation? Well, look who pays them. Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, Nabisco, General Mills all donate millions of dollars a year. And so rather than say, hey, this doesn't make any sense, drinking soft drinks is awful, they instead say, oh, everything in moderation. Susan, you want to have that Coke? Go ahead. Exercise 30 minutes more later today to compensate.
Right.
Of course, is complete nonsense. If you drink that diet soda, that soda with sugar, it triggers, for instance, glycation and small LDL particle formation. You cannot undo that with 30 minutes of more exercise. So there's falsehoods at every level because it's about the money, has nothing to do with health.
What about diet soda? Where are you on that? Because a lot of people think, well, I'm drinking the diet soda, I'm using the NutraSweet or the stevia or whatever it is, I'm not taking sugar. Is that okay?
So the acesulfame, neotame, the aspartame, saccharin are all triggers of dysbiosis. So that there's very good evidence, a lot of out of Israel, where they do very good science, usually, not always, but they did some very good science showing that those synthetic, not the natural sweeteners like stevia, but the synthetic sweeteners have the unique capacity to shift the composition of your microbiome such that it would take a slender, healthy person's gastrointestinal microbiome and make it look like the microbiome of an obese type 2 diabetic. And if you took that microbiome and put it in a slender, healthy person, it makes you more likely to be obese and diabetic. So it introduces disruptive changes into the gastrointestinal microbiome. So those synthetic sweeteners, even though they're still widely sold, are known to be major disruptors of the gastrointestinal microbiome.
And we're running out of time, and I could talk to you forever because you are just so full of information and wonderful to talk to. But tell me about the microbiome, because that's what everybody is talking about these days. It seems like everywhere I turn, there's somebody new who's got something expensive, and they want you to do umpteen thousands of dollars of tests to test your microbiome. People need to do that to test their microbiome. You know what I'm talking about. There are doctors out there or semi-doctors who are, making a fortune off people's concern about their microbiome.
Yeah. So no question, there's been major disruptions of the gastrointestinal and other microbiomes, mouth, skin, vagina, prostate, breast. All these organs have their own unique, or supposed to have their own unique microbiome signature. And these are very important, especially vaginal and oral, very important. But gastrointestinal, if I take an antibiotic, let's say clarithromycin or azithromycin for a few days, more than 1,000 species will disappear from your gastrointestinal microbiome. And many of those are beneficial species. When you lose beneficial species, unhealthy species are allowed to overproliferate. It's one of the reasons why people get C. diff, for instance, Clostridium difficile, enterocolitis. But even more commonly, there's a proliferation of other fecal microbes like E. coli, Campylobacter, Citrobacter, Pseudomonas, Proteus, and many others that then overproliferate in the colon. And that's part of the reason why people get colon cancer, ulcerative colitis, diverticular disease. But even worse, they can also ascend, like we talked about earlier, into the 24 feet of small intestine. The small intestine is very permeable by design because that's where we're supposed to absorb nutrients like amino acids and vitamins and minerals. But when fecal microbes come to dominate in the small intestine, that endotoxin in their cell walls enters the bloodstream. And that amplifies insulin resistance, inflammation. This is how the microbiome can be experienced, for instance, in the brain as anxiety, Lou Gehrig's disease, Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's dementia, migraine headaches. In the skin is rosacea or psoriasis. In the heart is atrial fibrillation or coronary disease or cardiomyopathy. In virtually every organ, there's a role for the microbiome via the process of endotoxemia. So that was suspected for many years by the alternative health community, but it was finally validated and proven in 2007 by Dr. Patrice Kenny and his group in Belgium. And now since corroborated numerous times, this is a real thing. And if you don't address it, let's say you take metformin and Byetta injections for type 2 diabetes, but no one addressed the major disruption of your microbiome and the endotoxemia, you're never going to have full control. You got to address. Now, the good news, Susan, is if you took a probiotic, would your SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, go away? No. So here's the questions I ask. No, it will not. What if I chose microbes, though, that are known to colonize the small intestine, where SIBO occurs, and the colon as well, and are known to produce what are called bacteriocins? These are natural antibiotics effective in killing fecal microbes. So I choose 3: a strain of Lactobacillus reuteri, strain of Lactobacillus gasseri, and Bacillus subtilis in the most recent recipe. We co-ferment them. So we make something that looks and smells like yogurt. It's not yogurt. It looks and smells like yogurt. But we're going to use my method, prolonged fermentation, 36 hours, to allow the microbes double numerous times. We count the microbes. We get about 300 billion per half cup serving. So we get these big numbers, and we eat it. And so far, it has been incredibly effective in normalizing SIBO. We know this because there's a device that you can use to test for SIBO. It's called the AIRE device, AIRE. I have no relationship with the company.
I know. I'm his lawyer. He's fine.
So it came from an engineer in Dublin, Ireland. You blow into it, talks to your smartphone, 0 to 10, and it tells you it's a mapping device, Susan. It's a device that tells you where microbes are living in the gastrointestinal tract. And by doing this, using this what I call SIBO yogurt, has been spectacularly effective in normalizing breath hydrogen gas and getting rid of all the signs and symptoms that accompany SIBO: joint pain, skin rashes, anxiety, depression, all those things.
Yeah, all those things.
And
And
it's
you get rid
you
of it
make it
with
in your
your
kitchen,
yogurt?
Susan. You make
And
it in
you
your
have a
kitchen.
yogurt recipe that gets rid of it?
Yeah, it's called SIBO yogurt. So it's in my Super Gut book. It's also in my blog, williamdavesmd.com. Now, I have to mention, I did change the recipe. In the book, I used Lactobacillus reuteri, Lactobacillus gasseri, and Bacillus coagulans. I switched Bacillus coagulans for Bacillus subtilis, only because the coagulans was not the most reliable for fermentation in dairy. And the subtilis, I think, is a better bacteriocin producer. And so I think it's even better than the original recipe. So in the book and in my blog, it tells you where to source the microbes, how to make the yogurt. It's really very easy. But it's not the stuff you buy in the store. That's something entirely different. I call it yogurt because it looks and smells like yogurt. What do you call it? Fermented dairy.
Dr. Davis magic medicine, I think I'd call it. Dr. Davis, you are such a treat. I could talk to you forever. I want to point out to everybody that in the description of this episode, we have links to all of Dr. Davis's information and all of his website and his program. And Dr. Davis can restore you to infinite health, right? You just have to follow simple steps and not do all these expensive tests that people are holding out to you right now. What's the short answer, Dr. Davis? Grain-free, sugar-free? What else?
Yeah, the diet is wheat, grain, and sugar elimination, address common nutrient deficiencies like vitamin D, magnesium, and omega-3s. These are not correct for the diet, they're correct for all the mistakes we've made in modern life. Like we have to filter our drinking. We have to, you don't have a choice. It's got sewage, it's got other things. But water filtration removes all magnesium. So those nutrients are meant to compensate for the deficiencies of modern life. And then we address this disruption of the microbiome because it's at least half the U.S. population, Susan. It's not rare. It's extremely common. It's a work in progress. I won't tell you that I have all the answers, but I think strategies like the SIBO yogurt are extremely powerful. And we're not talking about drugs. We're not talking about procedures. We're talking about things you can do in your own kitchen, and it works spectacularly well.
Control of your life. Dr. Davis, you are a national treasure. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me.
Thank you, Susan. Thanks to all you.
Well, thank you for all you do. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also watch every episode over on our YouTube channel. Please leave a rating and review on your chosen platform. It really helps us reach more listeners and keep the conversation going. Follow us on X at NoHoldingBackFM, and for my weekly column, visit www.creators.com. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for Dr. Davis for all you do, and I'll see you next time on No Holding Back.